Hello everybody, so today we will be going over the intake interview and quality review training. If you're probably seeing this video because you have already completed your volunteer standards of conduct training. If you haven't, please go ahead and watch the volunteer standards of conduct training and then come back to the intake interview training. So after we complete this training, we will go over how to log into Link and Learn. Throughout this training, I will be saying, mentioning some of the questions that will be in your test. So please take in mind that when I say please note this, it means it will be on your test. So just be sure to see the complete video to get the correct answers. Also, if you have your booklet, the test questions are on the publication 6744. This booklet, I can put the link down below so you can open it up and see the questions. The questions for the intake interview and quality review tests are on page 23. So if you want to do so right now, go ahead and turn to page 23 on your booklet. Now we're going to go ahead and get started. This is part 1, intake. You can also visit the irs.gov website. You can search for publication 5101 for more information on the intake interview and quality review training for the 2020 filing season. Other useful material can also be found in the www.irs.gov website. We will be going over the form 136114C. This is an intake interview form. We will also be going over the form 14446, the virtual VITA taxpayer consent form. And also, if you have your publication 4012, this is a volunteer resource guide. I will also link it down below so you can have that. This publication will be available at each site. But I will provide the link if you want to use the link. Also, publication 17, federal income tax. Okay, so the objective of this training is to follow consistent intake, interview, and quality review process. Review sections of the form 13614C, intake, interview, and quality review sheet. Steps of complete intake process, steps of complete interview process, steps of complete quality process, and per quality site requirement number 2, completing the form 13614C is mandatory for each return prepared. Volunteers who refuse to prepare returns without intake interview process are violating the volunteer standards of conduct. So just keep in mind that this form, we're going to go over it, and this is the form that will be very important for us to complete because it will allow us to complete the tax return with many of the questions that we need answered. Please note that completing the form 13614C is mandatory for each return prepared. This is an example of how it looks like, the form 13614C. All VITA volunteers must use the form 13614C along with an effective interview for every return. We will be going over in detail of this form in a bit, but this form will be needed to be complete. Like I said in the previous slide, this form will be available on our website. If there's a client that has a question, how to get this form, they can visit the United Way of South Texas. Under our work, there will be a section where it says VITA, and towards the bottom it will say forms to fill out prior to appointment, and we will have it in English and Spanish. This year, these forms, the yellow ones will be in English and the white ones will be in Spanish. So if the client needs a Spanish version, you will give them the white one. This is page 2 of the form. This is page 3 and page 4. So it is pretty long. We will be having these forms at the sites, so whenever a client comes in to their appointment, because this year it will be by appointment based, the greeter or the intake specialist will help the client fill out this form. Like you see, there's a lot of questions on this form, so it is much easier for our intake specialist to help the client fill it out, because it is lengthy and they might take a little while to fill it out themselves. On page 4, there is a consent to disclose tax return information. Towards the bottom, the taxpayer needs to sign here and then date. And this is basically allowing us to keep their information for next year. And just make sure you get the signature. Okay, like I mentioned, the intake process and drop-off method. Previous years, we would see clients face-to-face. This year, our clients will only be at our sites to drop off their documents. So the clients will no longer meet with the volunteers. They will drop off, and the only contact that they will have is with the greeters. If you previously saw the volunteer standards of conduct, we go more into detail on that training. Taxpayers that call to set up an appointment will be informed that they may complete the intake form in advance prior to their appointment. So like I said, it is mentioned in our, it is available in our United Way website. The greeter interview specialist will help the client fill out the form 13614C, and please note, all the questions on the form 13614 must be answered. If the client fills out the form in advance, you must change the unsure answers to yes or no based on the conversation with the client. You should also complete all the shaded area questions. So on the first page of that form, there is a box that is a little darker than the rest, is shaded. You will also have to ask them those questions. So the form 13614C is printed in English and Spanish, like we mentioned, and also available to download from the irs.gov website in other languages. Okay, so verifying the identity. Identity theft continues to be a nationwide problem. You should begin the interview by requiring a photo ID to verify the identity of the taxpayer and spouse on the tax return. Exceptions for requiring photo ID should be made only under extreme circumstances or for taxpayers known to the site after being approved by the site coordinator. So please, every tax client will be required to bring a photo ID. If they have dependents, smaller children or other dependents, they will only be necessary to bring their social security. If they have an ITIN number, it's like a social, but it's not a social, but the government usually sends them a letter. You might want to see the letter, and actually see the ITIN number, not just get it off with what they say. So just be sure to get that photo ID, and exemptions, like it says, only be made under extreme circumstances, like if they lost their paperwork due to the Hurricane Hannah or something like that. There will be taxpayers that have been with BIDA for a long time, so they might feel that they don't need to show their ID. This is completely up to your site coordinator, but if you don't feel comfortable, you can always request it, and let them know, I need to see it. Okay, so the intake process, return and volunteer certification levels. The site must have a process to ensure that the return is within scope of the VITA program, identify the certification level needed for the tax return, and ensure volunteers have the certifications needed for the returns they prepare. So when you do take all your exams and you are able to print out the form that you need to bring at each site, I will go ahead and go over it at the end of this training, how to get the form. But it will show there what level of certification you are. So if you have gone over the volunteer standards of conduct training, we do talk about how the site coordinator will put an A or a B next to your name when you wear your name tag, and this will identify what certification level you are. On the form 13614C, included certification level as shown below. So in this form, there will be these questions for the taxpayers, right? So the taxpayer will answer, did you get any wages or salary? And they would put yes or no, right? So if they select yes here, a person with the basic certification level can do this return. But if they put tip income and they select yes as well, somebody with an advanced certification level needs to do this return. So if you're advanced certification level, you can do any return, right, with A or B. But if you only a basic level certified volunteer, you can only do tax returns that are selected with the B. If there's one A on your form, an advanced tax preparer will have to complete that one. Mostly all our volunteers are advanced level certification, and only very few people have certified with basic level, so I don't see why we should have an issue with that. HSA is for health savings account, A is for advanced like we mentioned, and M is for military. Next step, the interview process. So after the client has completed this form, after you ask them all these questions, you do need to interview them on this form. So complete a thorough interview with the taxpayer, because at any point you may find that the tax return is above the required certification level, the tax return is outside the scope of the VITA TCE programs, the taxpayer does not have all needed information or documentation, and both the intake and interview process is completed with the greeter interview specialist at the entrance or outside the building. Discovering these things before starting a return will save you time, the taxpayer's time, and will avoid much frustration. So, yes, sometimes it does happen when we're already assisting a client and we realize that they made more than $60,000, which is our VITA threshold. So, because we didn't check, their documents, and we didn't check with them, did you earn less than $60,000? Of course, this year we're trying to limit this because we are assisting by appointment. So clients who get an appointment should have already gone through those type of questions. We really can't control what they tell us and what they don't tell us when we set up an appointment. But if we do an interview process and we ask them, questions regarding the documents they bring in, we'll have a better idea. But sometimes we do miss these clients, and unfortunately we have to say no and refer them to somewhere else. So just keep that in mind, that an interview process can help us, determine a lot of things. So in part 1, your personal information on the form, verify that the information in part 1 is correct and complete. Ensure that the names match the Social Security document. So here, like you're seeing, part 1, it's basically all their personal information. You also want to ask them, one of the important one is, Have you or your spouse or your dependents have been victim of tax-related identity theft or been issued a identity protection PIN? A lot of the clients forget their PIN because, it's just something that they miss, they forget. So you want to go ahead and remind them, do you have a PIN? A PIN that the IRS sent you, And if they go ahead and just select yes or no, and if yes, they need to have it with them, because if they don't have it with them, we cannot continue. So there's a lot of other questions that you need to get, their job title, a phone number. A phone number is important as well, and if they've been a full-time student, legally blind. This is where you'll find those questions. So information on part 1 impacts tax law determinations. When a taxpayer is a full-time student, it may impact multiple tax law issues such as child independent care credit, retirement savings contribution credit, whether the taxpayer can be claimed as a dependent. So just make sure that if the student was a full-time student, this can all affect the credits that they receive, and you just want to ask them questions regarding how many years have they been in college? Is this their first year? Is this do they have the form that the college sends them, the 1098T, I believe? And you just want to have that information. Information in this section will help the preparer make determinations about the filing status, dependency exceptions, various credits, and deductions. So here on this section, it says list the names below of everyone who lived with you last year, anyone who supported you but did not live with you last year. So they will list, mainly they will list, the dependents that they're claiming, the information like their date of birth, the relationship, number of months lived with you. So, for example, if a person says, well, I'm head of household because I took, I'm responsible for all my expenses in the household, but they cannot be head of household if they don't have a dependent. So their filing status is actually single. So if they're head household, they should have a dependent at least, and if they're single, they don't have dependents, but head of household for sure. A lot of people mess it up with single. Also, married filing joint couples might have, dependents, and also married filing separate. We do not do married filing separate. So make sure that if they tell you, oh, my wife is not doing it with me, and they let you know, just make sure you tell them, we don't take care of those type of tax returns. We should be able to, find out when we're setting up appointments for the clients if they are actually married filing separate, but they might still lie to us sometimes. So just keep that in mind. A critical part of the interview process is to make sure all the questions in page 2 of Form 13614C are complete. The taxpayer may have left a question unanswered or marked the question unsure because they did not understand. So in this one, a lot, like it says there, many clients don't understand the question and they put unsure. When they put unsure and you see it there, you might want to go ahead and ask them again. Did you receive any tip, any other income that wasn't in your W-2 form, cash income? And they might, clarify with you, oh yes, I forgot, like I remember now, or I understand better. But you always just want to clarify and change all the unsure answered to yes or no. Taxpayer is asked about income received and should check the appropriate line item, yes or no, or unsure. The answers must agree with the documents: W-2, 1098-T, 1099 interest, and provided by the taxpayer. So as you see here, this income part 3, is very important, because if the client puts yes on this question, for example, wages or salary, this form that is in bracket should be included with all the forms that they're submitting. So, for example, please note that this will be on your test. Interest, dividends, let's say from checking savings accounts, if they select yes for this one, what do they need to have? Of course, they need to have these forms. So if you see the question answered yes for interest, they should give you this form, and then you should ask them, do you have any other interest income? You know, because they might have more forms and they're just forgetting them at home. So just keep that in mind, that if they just check what they selected yes, and then check if they brought that form with them. Volunteers must conduct an extensive interview to ensure that taxpayers who are self-employed are reporting all income, including cash payments received from work performed. Any income earned must be reported. So a lot of clients are self-employed, and we do need them to have all their expenses already added up and ready and divided in categories if they decide, you know, to let us know where every expense went to. So we will be letting the clients know when we schedule the appointments that they do need to, you know, have everything ready for us. We will not be counting their receipts. We will not be adding their receipts up or anything like that. It's just going to take more time. Like, this is appointment based, and we are limited on volunteers. They are no longer going to be able to bring that in. Okay, so part 3, still under income. It is necessary to ask clarifying question, even if all the questions are answered. If the taxpayer checks yes to the question retirement income payments from pension and annuities or IRA, they have already given you the form 1099-R and their IRA distribution. You should ask then, is this your only distribution? Is the taxpayer left a form 1099-R at home? They will need to return with it to continue. So, you know, in this case, it's by appointment, and they should have brought it already. Clients should be prepared for with other documents. If they have to go back home, they might, you know, miss their appointment, because we already told them we might be able to assist you when you come back, but that's not guaranteed. So you just want to make sure that they have all the documents, and if they want to bring it, if you want to start on the tax return but just let the tax preparer know that they're missing something, we can go ahead and do that, but the client does have to come back at that same day. Questions in this section help alert the preparer to expenses paid by the taxpayer that may affect their return. So in part 4, there's some expenses. The taxpayer expenses are not the only consideration for tax deduction or credits. Use reference materials to determine eligibility for deductions and credits. Always consider the most advantageous position for the taxpayer. So, yeah, you just want to go over these questions. The taxpayer just has to answer these and make sure they're complete. Part 5, the life events section, asks numerous questions that relate to the calculations of tax and processing of a return. Publication 17 and 412 contain additional information about the information that needs to be collected to make a correct determination. So these are just other additional questions. Let me see if there's one. Like you see here, there's health savings account. This is important. They need these forms. Purchase of and install energy efficient home items such as windows, furnace installation. This is also one of that I've seen a few people ask us if they have the solar panels. If you want to refer to your 4012 in order to make that determination, if they can't, you can just go under energy savings credit. Okay, on page 3, I'm sorry. In this section, the taxpayer will indicate how they want to receive the refund. Comments and additional information that will be helpful during quality review that can be recorded in area for additional comments. So in this section, if you see here, if you are due a refund, you would like a direct deposit, yes or no. So if a client says yes, just make sure we have the correct routing number and account number. There's also other additional questions like if they want to contribute the $3 to the presidential election campaign. And here's a reminder, refunds can only be deposited into the account with the taxpayer's name. Verify the bank information and account and routing numbers are correct using source documents, bank statements, or checks. So please note down the bank name, I'm sorry, and the routing number and account number. The Form 15080 will be used to obtain taxpayers' consent to have their tax information be easily available on the software when they return to the VITA TC site in the future. Yeah, like we mentioned this in the beginning, that's what the consent is for. Okay, so the interview process, due diligence. Generally, as the IRS tax law certified volunteer, you can rely in good faith on the information from the taxpayer without requiring documentation as verification. Due diligence requires asking the taxpayer to clarify information that may appear inconsistent or incomplete. When receiving the information for accuracy, ask yourself if the information is unusual or questionable. An example is, you do not need to see proof of the taxpayer's health insurance coverage if you feel it is not unusual or questionable. Remember, if you're not comfortable with the information provided by the taxpayer, you're not obligated to prepare the return. So, at the end of the day, it is their responsibility if they get audited by the IRS to show, proof of this that they claim to have. The next step, quality review process. The purpose is to ensure that the taxpayer's tax return is accurate based on the intake interview sheet and the supporting documents provided by the taxpayer and the interview with the taxpayer. Every return must be quality reviewed. So please note that all the sites are required to conduct quality reviews on every return prepared at the site. A second pair of eyes that is focused on quality review offers the best opportunity to correct small errors before they cause big problems. The quality review takes place after the return is prepared, but before the taxpayer signs the return. So please note also, the taxpayer signs the tax return after the quality review, after they've been reviewed of what they owe, what they're gonna get back, what credits they got, and after being advised of the responsibility for the accuracy of the information on the return. Okay. There is two acceptable methods. Designated review is preferred. Employ a designated quality reviewer, a volunteer solely dedicated to reviewing returns prepared by other volunteers at the site. Peer review. Volunteers can review each other's returns. Okay, so usually our site coordinator is responsible for designating a reviewer. And so you can also have a partner that you can review, but mostly on all sites, there's actually a designated person already. So self-review, quality reviewing, quality reviewing and reviewing you prepared. I'm sorry, it's so confusing. So you cannot self-review your tax return that you have prepared. It is not acceptable, a quality review method. It is not acceptable to review your own tax return that you worked on. You always want to have those second pair of eyes, and please note that this is also one of the questions that will be in your test. This is not a acceptable quality review method. Okay, so after reviewing the tax return, the quality reviewer will call the client over the phone and explain the tax return. The client will receive the OK to meet again outside the building with the quality reviewer to sign. The client will verify their identity one last time and sign the e-file form 8879. The client may now leave the building. So this is basically the drop-off method that the quality reviewer will take. The form 8879 prints out with their whole income tax packet, so that form is inside of that when it prints out through the printer. So we do have a quality review checklist. You do need to check if the photo ID is present and it's verified with the taxpayer, the volunteer return preparer, and the quality reviewer are certified to complete this return and is within the scope of the program. All the questions in the part 1 through 6 are answered, and unsure boxes were discussed with the taxpayer and correctly marked yes or no. All applicable information in shaded areas were completed by the certified volunteer preparer. The names, addresses, social security numbers, ITIN numbers, EINs were verified and correct. The filing status is correct. The dependency determinations are correct. All income, with or without source documents, checked yes in Part 3 are verified and correct. All applicable adjustments to incomes are verified and correct. Standard or itemized deductions are correct. All eligible credits are correct. All applicable provisions of ACA were considered for each person named on the tax return are correct. Any shared responsibility payments, healthcare exemptions, or premium tax credit reconciliations are correct. Federal income tax withholdings and estimated tax payments are correct. Direct deposit, debit, and checking savings account numbers are correct. SIDN number is correct on the return. During the visit, the taxpayer was advised that they are responsible for the information on the return, and any errors identified or incomplete Form 13614C are discussed with the preparer. Okay, so we have completed the training for the intake interview and quality review. The next step is to complete your exam, which you will need the publication 6744. Like I mentioned, the questions are on page 23. You can also go to the irs.gov website, search for the publication 6744, but I will put the link down below. And there are 10 questions in total, and like I mentioned, page 23 and 24. To become certified, volunteers are required to create a Link and Learn account. If you're a returning volunteer, you can reset your password, but you can go to lincolnlearncertification.com.